Claire and Thomas Whitaker were the perfect power couple, wealthy, charming, and admired by everyone they met. But behind their polished smiles and high society lifestyle was a web of lies so complex. It fooled investors, celebrities, and even the FBI. What started as a glittering fairy tale ended in a nationwide manhunt, a multi-million-dollar fraud, and a shocking betrayal that no one saw coming. In the quiet suburb of Fairview, Thomas and Claire Whitaker were the couple everyone admired. Their lives seemed like something out of a movie, flawless, enviable, and completely untouchable. Thomas, with his confident smile and sharp suits, worked as a high-profile financial advisor who was trusted by local politicians, business owners, and retirees. Claire was the soft-spoken curator of the town's only art gallery, known for her eye for rare pieces and elegant taste. Together, they were Fairview's golden pair. Their home was a sprawling estate at the edge of town, surrounded by perfectly trimmed hedges and security gates that hinted at wealth but not arrogance. They attended community events, donated to charities, and hosted seasonal parties that drew everyone from the mayor to high school teachers. The Whitakers had the kind of charm that made people trust them without hesitation. No one questioned their wealth or how quickly they rose to the top. No one looked closely. There was no reason to doubt Thomas was known to offer financial advice over coffee at the country club. Always ready with tips and insights that made others money, people rarely noticed how carefully he avoided discussing his own clients or portfolio. Claire, too, kept things vague. Her gallery was successful, she said, thanks to connections in Europe, though no one ever met those mysterious art dealers she referenced. Still, no one suspected anything. The Whitakers were too polished, too kind, too involved in the town's life. They played the long game, earning trust not over weeks or months, but over years. Then came the awards. Thomas received a Regional Businessman of the Year plaque, and Claire was honored for her work with local schools. With every public recognition, their reputation grew stronger, more unshakable. They volunteered for food drives, donated to victims of house fires, and even helped organize a new wing at the town's hospital. Their names were etched into plaques all across Fairview. To outsiders, they were simply generous. To locals, they were heroes. But beneath the polished image, the Whitakers were hiding something darker. Their lifestyle didn't come from careful saving or smart investments, it came from deception. Every smile was rehearsed. Every public gesture had a purpose. They were building a wall of credibility so high that no one would think to look behind it. Over time, odd details began to slip through the cracks, though they went mostly unnoticed. Claire was seen meeting strangers in out-of-town hotels. Thomas would take unexplained trips to remote states under the guise of client meetings. Employees at Claire's gallery sometimes complained about missing paychecks, but the complaints disappeared just as quickly as they were raised. No one wanted to believe anything bad about the couple who had done so much good. So, the whispers faded. What no one in Fairview realized was that Thomas and Claire had built a life of illusions. Every part of their public image was carefully constructed to distract from a hidden world of fraud, lies, and eventually murder. Their perfect life was just the surface, and something sinister was quietly waiting beneath it. The morning Thomas Whitaker received a formal letter from the Department of Justice, he didn't show any signs of fear. He calmly folded the paper, placed it in his briefcase, and went about his day as if nothing had happened. But behind closed doors, he and Claire were beginning to panic. The letter wasn't an accusation, it was an invitation for a voluntary interview. The kind of polite warning that meant federal agents were circling. That same week, two of Thomas's long-time clients pulled their investments and filed formal complaints. One of them revealed that Thomas had convinced him to invest in a green energy fund that didn't actually exist. The paperwork had been expertly forged, right down to fake quarterly reports and phone numbers linked to burner phones. When the complaints reached the attention of the FBI task force already investigating the couple, everything began accelerating. Claire wasn't doing much better. A former intern from her gallery leaked internal documents to the authorities. These files showed detailed notes on fabricated art sales, payments from offshore accounts, and conversations with anonymous buyers that couldn't be traced. One of the emails even contained instructions to burn all sales logs before audit. That single line was enough to trigger a warrant. The next 48 hours were critical. Investigators conducted quiet surveillance, tracking Claire's movements around town and monitoring Thomas's phone. They discovered Claire had made multiple visits to a storage unit just outside the city. When agents opened it under the warrant, they found stacks of blank canvas, unsold paintings listed as missing, and desktop computers containing encrypted files. One folder was titled Final Exit Plan. The Whitakers had, in fact, planned for this moment. The files outlined their strategy if things ever spiraled out of control. There were instructions for liquidating certain accounts, a list of fake identities with matching forged documents and plane tickets booked under, aliases to Belize, where they had wired more than $700,000 over the past 2 years. They had even rehearsed their alibis, but the FBI was a step ahead. As the agents closed in, Thomas and Claire tried to make one last move. Claire visited the bank to withdraw a large sum of cash, just under the limit that would trigger an automatic report. Meanwhile, Thomas disappeared from his office for over 6 hours, later claiming he was at a networking luncheon. His phone, however, had pinged near a private airfield during that time. It was now clear the Whitakers weren't going to cooperate. They were going to flee. But even their exit plan had cracks. The FBI flagged their tickets, froze their known accounts, and issued alerts to international border agencies. Surveillance was increased, and the couple's every move was monitored in real time. The illusion of control they had maintained for so long was collapsing. Their lies had grown too big, their web of deceit too tangled to escape. What they didn't know was that someone close to them was already working with the FBI, and soon that betrayal would bring everything crashing down. The cracks in the Whitakers' perfect facade began to grow wider when a local bank flagged a series of unusual transactions tied to a shell company, registered under Claire's name. At first, the bank assumed it was an error. Claire was too refined to respectable to be involved in anything shady, but protocol demanded that the case be handed over to the bank's fraud investigation team. From there, a chain reaction began that neither Thomas nor Claire could fully control. Investigators discovered that the shell company had been used to move large sums of money between multiple international accounts. Some of the transactions were routed through art sales at Claire's gallery, where expensive pieces were listed and marked as sold to buyers who didn't seem to exist. The art was never shipped, there were no receipts, and yet the money flowed in and out like clockwork. It became clear the gallery was more than just a place to showcase paintings. It was a front for laundering money. Meanwhile, Thomas's activities began to draw suspicion as well. A retired police officer who had invested his pension through Thomas noticed irregularities in his quarterly statements. When he confronted Thomas, the advisor assured him everything was fine. But the man's instincts told him otherwise, and he contacted a private financial analyst. Within weeks, they uncovered fake investment reports and returns that had never existed. The money was gone. Word spread quietly through Fairview, but still many refused to believe it. How could the Whitakers, pillars of the community, be involved in something so criminal? Their charm had bought them loyalty, and their reputation protected them from immediate suspicion. But beyond Fairview, the situation was turning serious. Federal investigators took notice when several financial red flags connected the Whitakers to a broader network of fraudulent operations. Spanning state lines, Claire's art gallery had been flagged into other states, and Thomas's name showed up in offshore account reports under an alias. An undercover FBI agent was assigned to the case, blending into the local community and attending a Whitaker charity gala in disguise. At the same time, the Whitakers sensed the walls closing in. Claire grew more erratic, cutting ties with gallery employees, staying out late, and refusing to answer questions about her finances. Thomas, on the other hand, doubled down on public appearances, insisting their lives were completely in order. They hired a new PR consultant. They made a generous donation to the police department. It was all an effort to control the narrative, but it was too late. The FBI had already begun collecting hard evidence, slowly building a case, surveillance, footage, wiretaps, financial records, all were being catalogued and reviewed. The goal wasn't just to expose them, but to understand how they had fooled so many for so long. The Whitakers had built a house of cards, and now every move they made shook its fragile foundation. What had begun as a few clever lies was unraveling into something far more dangerous. The couple who had once seemed untouchable was about to find out just how quickly admiration could turn to suspicion. The walls were closing in fast. What once felt like a game of intellect and elegance had now become a frantic scramble for survival. Claire sensed it first. The air felt heavier. People at the gallery no longer smiled with the same warmth. She began noticing cars idling too long near her neighborhood. Even her closest allies in the art world had grown silent, their messages clipped and cold. She didn't know who to trust anymore because someone was talking, and she was right. A junior assistant at Thomas's firm, Adam Pierce, had been approached by the FBI months earlier. Initially hesitant, he turned over financial spreadsheets that didn't quite match the official reports. But what changed everything was the voice recordings. Adam had, without Thomas's knowledge, recorded several private meetings discussing client portfolios that never existed. On one, Thomas had clearly said, "As long as they don't ask for a paper trail, we're safe." That single sentence became the cornerstone of the FBI's case. Agents knew they had to act swiftly. On a quiet Thursday morning, simultaneous search warrants were executed. Claire was arrested at the gallery as she prepared for a private viewing. She didn't resist. Her expression was more stunned than fearful, as if the final curtain had dropped on a performance she thought would never end. Thomas, however, wasn't so easy to find. He had disappeared just hours before the raid. It was discovered later that he had access to a hidden account under a third alias and withdrawn close to $150,000 in cryptocurrency. The funds were quickly moved to a digital wallet connected to a darknet exchange. He had been planning to vanish just as the final exit plan outlined. But Thomas underestimated just how closely he was being watched. Using advanced phone triangulation and surveillance footage, agents tracked his movements across state lines. He had abandoned his car near a wooded rest stop and boarded a chartered ride. Under the name Julian Marks, his final destination was a private dock along the Gulf Coast, where a small boat was waiting to ferry him to international waters. What Thomas didn't know was that the boat's captain was working with law enforcement. As Thomas stepped onto the dock, U.S. Marshals emerged from the shadows. He was arrested without a word, wearing sunglasses and a windbreaker still clinging to the illusion of escape. Meanwhile, news of the Whitakers' downfall spread rapidly. Headlines screamed betrayal, fraud, and betrayal again. Former friends expressed disbelief, while victims came forward in waves. Clients, collectors, Even charity foundations that had been duped into donations. The couple had built their empire on a house of cards, and it had finally collapsed. The most devastating blow, however, came from within their own family. Claire's sister, who had always admired her success, told reporters she felt ashamed and heartbroken. Public sentiment turned swiftly. Sympathy faded, replaced by a deep sense of betrayal. The Whitakers weren't just criminals, they were con artists who fooled everyone, even those who loved them. The courtroom was packed. Reporters filled the benches, pens scribbling furiously. Cameras clicking outside the doors. Claire and Thomas Whitaker sat side by side, dressed in sleek, neutral tones, their once confident demeanor replaced with blank stares and pursed lips. After nearly a year of investigations, arrests, and public fallout, their trial had become one of the most high-profile cases in recent memory. Prosecutors laid out their case with brutal precision. Emails, fake documents, voice recordings, and detailed financial records showed a clear trail of deceit. More than 60 individuals and institutions had been conned out of millions. They played footage of Claire hosting fake auctions, laughing with clients while showcasing art that didn't exist. They displayed Thomas's web of shell companies and manipulated stock portfolios, designed to trap investors in a never-ending cycle of false returns. One by one, victims took the stand. A retired couple who had invested their life savings and lost everything. A young artist whose work was stolen and sold under a different name. A non-profit director who had donated $300,000 believing it would support an inner-city art program. The testimonies painted a vivid picture of how deeply the Whitakers' lies had spread. The defense tried to claim that Claire had been manipulated by Thomas, and Thomas's attorneys argued he was under extreme mental stress, but neither argument held. The jury listened intently as more evidence piled up: hidden offshore accounts, private notes discussing exit routes, even a list titled "Who Can Be Silenced." As the trial neared its end, it became clear there was no way out. The couple had fooled everyone: investors, celebrities, politicians, even law enforcement, but now the mask had fallen. The prosecution's closing argument was devastating. They used charm as a weapon, art as bait, and trust as their currency, and they destroyed lives for their own gain. The jury returned a verdict in less than 2 days. Guilty on all 29 counts, including wire fraud, conspiracy, and money laundering. The judge, visibly disturbed by the sheer scale of the deception, handed down a harsh sentence. Thomas Whitaker was given 60 years without the possibility of parole. Claire received 45 years. Both sentences reflected not just the financial crimes, but the deep emotional scars left behind. But the story didn't end there. Months after sentencing, a new twist emerged. An anonymous whistleblower tipped off authorities about a third individual involved in the scheme, someone who had helped the couple move money overseas. This revelation led to another round of investigations, and rumors began to swirl that the Whitakers may not have been the masterminds, but pawns in a larger network. The public, once fascinated by the couple's downfall, was now gripped by a deeper question: how far did the deception go? Claire and Thomas were behind bars, but the echoes of their crimes continued to ripple through the art world, financial circles, and the media. The couple who once fooled everyone, even the FBI, had finally been exposed. Yet, some still wonder if the real story is even darker than anyone ever imagined.